Yeah, it was a good time, honey, under the sky. Yeah, it was a good time, honey, just you and I. Feeling alright.
Yo, welcome to All Wheels Podcast. This is Evan, and I'm here with Brady. What's up, dude?
Yo.
Oh, come on. Nope.
No, I wanted to give somewhat of an accurate presentation of kind of how I'm feeling today.
Oh, that's a hungover one?
Yeah. So, by the way, to everyone listening, happy 4th of July.
Yeah.
That
it'll be
has
posted on the 4th, so.
a little bit to do with how I'm feeling today.
With why?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like I'm slightly less hungover than you, so.
Yeah, but
so that's good.
I'll be able to truck along and
just keep putting that Mick Ultra down the hatch. You'll be all right.
I know. Yeah, so we are missing Max today.
Yeah.
We got his blessing to carry on without him today, but
we didn't want to miss a Monday, so we're going to keep it going.
Exactly.
Yeah, Max is where is he now? He's in Northern California, I think, or no, Oregon, I think, at his parents. I forget where his parents moved. I think Oregon. And anyways, yeah, he's up there. He finished his motor swap, his Subaru motor into his van, his Volkswagen van, like 80. What year is that thing? 80 something, 84 or something like that.
Wait a second. That's what it was. I in the Discord, I heard him talking about it, but I don't think I knew exactly. I might have been outside of that initial conversation.
Oh, I thought you knew what he was talking about.
No, I just went along with it.
He's got a Westphalia 84 or something, and it had the original motor in it with, I don't even remember.
It was like
200K on it or something, and it ran fine and all. But his cousin in Northern California somewhere, I forget, is like super into those things, and he has done a bunch of motor swaps. And I don't remember what Max can tell all about it, but it's some Subaru motor, I think, relatively modern fuel injected Subaru motor, was in the dude's I think similar van, and he was upgrading to an even bigger, newer motor.
Oh, okay.
So he told Max, like, hey, if you want to bring your van out here, you can have this whole thing. We'll just swap it all into yours.
Wow.
And then I don't have to deal with getting rid of it or anything. So Max
hopped in his van,
drove it out there,
mid-trip swap.
Camped
so
all the way,
ballsy.
Got to his cousin's house, spent a week swapping the whole motor and maybe transmission. I don't think they swapped the transmission.
No, you can just adapt them.
Dude, whole thing, got it running well again, and then he drove it up to his parents' house, I think in Oregon. And then
he's going to drive it back.
Heading home today, I think, back to Colorado.
Oh my!
That's
okay.
Like classic Max for you.
That is awesome. Well, I don't want to talk too much about it. I want to save some of that with the man himself. But
no, he'll have a good story about it for sure. I've just gotten little pieces. I don't know all the details, so
yeah,
we'll see. Okay. But it went well, so I know the car's running good. So it's pretty nuts.
Butthead. That is awesome.
So yeah. God, I've got a story about. So I was going to say what you've been working on, but this is okay. Check this out. This is ridiculous. I've got my Stelvio, right? The Moto Guzzi. Mm-hmm. So I hit 776 miles on it like 2 weeks ago or something. And so and we're doing all these trips this summer. So like next week we're heading out on a 4-day camping trip, and it's not even a ton of miles, maybe 1,000 miles or something. And then I've got another trip later, and I'm like, okay, got to get this bike, like do all the maintenance on it, do oil change and all this shit. Cause it was, 10-year-old oil in it, which I don't know if that matters, but it was break-in oil. And I'm like,
probably a little bit.
so I'm like, all right. And then I think I mentioned it before, but these like the only real problem with these bikes is that they had flat tappets on the camshaft, on the overhead cams. And those wore out because the coating is like bad on them or something. So I went ahead and bought the update kit for it to go to the roller tappets and new cams, and decided to put it in because I figured like, okay, screw it. Like I don't really want to touch this bike again. I just want to do the maintenance on it, and then it's just ready to go whenever I want, and I just do oil changes on it. So I get the kit, and it's a little bit of work, but it wasn't bad. The first time, because I've now done it 3 times, I take it apart, like put them in, and I'll post some pictures of it and stuff. It's like a big box assembly that bolts into the head, right? That has the cam and the tappets and everything is all integrated in this. They call it the cam box. And then it just, you just slap a keyed gear onto the cam that is attached to the chain. And like, that's what drives it. So all the work's up top. Like it's not hard to get to or anything. So anyways, I do this all, put it together. The first time took me like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours to do both sides, checking everything. Like, okay, done, worked great. And then I put it all back together, realize I have 2 O-rings sitting on the table. And I'm and I go back and check. Okay, those O-rings seal up. It's got a really deep spark plug tube, right? So the plug's like deep in the head, but all this shit sits way up above it. So it's got I don't even know, 6-8 inch deep spark plug tube. Those O-rings seal the cam box because the tube runs through it. So it seals it up, right? So I'm like, God damn it. Like it's going to leak oil all over inside the spark plug tube, and then it drains out a little drain hole on the side. So okay. Take it apart again. Now I'm better. I do the whole thing in 2 hours. Take it apart, put the O-rings in, put it all back together. Okay, everything's great. Finish up all my other maintenance. I blew out the fork seals off-roading it a while ago. So redo the forks. I took everything apart and greased everything because there was like, apparently grease is like very rare in Italy because there was none on anything. So I grease all the swing arm linkage and all this stuff and the steering bearings and all, do all this crap, put it back together. I'm like, okay, ready to run. Fire it up, runs great, everything sounds great. Pissing oil out of the left side spark plug tube drain hole. And I'm like, dude, I put the O-rings in. Like what? What the hell? What did I do wrong? I'm like looking around, like I cannot figure out what the hell happened. And I check everything I could think of. And I'm like, just like, okay, I don't even know. So I get so pissed last night. So I go get drunk last night. And I'm just like, okay, forget this. I come home last night and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go look at the old cam boxes. Like maybe I missed something. Is there like another O-ring? Like what? I'm going to go look at the old ones because they're really similar. Like maybe I'll see something. So I go check it, or just at least make sure the old O-rings are there. Cause I'm like, maybe I tore the O-ring or something and I'll use the old one. So I go get the old ones out, lay them out. And I realize I'm looking at the left side and the right side. The left side has this tube that is part of the spark plug tube assembly that is actually what seals up in the O-ring is stuck in the left box. And then in the right box, there is no tube. And I'm like, oh dude.
My.
So when I pulled the old box out, the tube came out with the left cam assembly. And on the right one, it stayed in the head. And I just never noticed it. So the O-rings were doing nothing because there was no tube.
Yeah.
So then this morning, and now I realize it, I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So for the third time, I pull it apart just to the left side. And now I can do it in 45 minutes.
I was going to say, yeah.
I take the whole thing apart, put the tube inside, put it all back together, set the valves again, and like done. Perfect. No more leak, runs perfectly.
Oh,
I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. I don't know. This is like story of my life. Every time I work on something, I overlook shit like that. The most simple like thing right in front of your face, and I don't even catch it.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything remotely like that going on in my shop. I've honestly been talking shop more than I've been actually working in the shop.
You doing any work on the Triumph or what?
So I've done, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the car. I haven't had too much time to work on it, which I knew is going to be an issue with this. I've done like quarter of, I guess, the car as far as prepping the paint for that application I was talking about or have talked about. Right. So just kind of taking my time with it. Now that it's like a reality that I'm going to start jumping into it, I've been kind of modifying my parts list to where the last thing, like, I guess as an example is like, okay, well, there's some seats that are in it now. They were just like pulled from a junkyard from like the first time we built it. And I was thinking, okay, do I want to do like, I don't know, put some like Sparcos, like racing seats in it? Then I'm like, no, I mean, I'm planning on daily driving this and I prefer comfort. The seats are in there are pretty good. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, the covers or the upholstery is shit.
What are they? What are the seats that are in it?
So that's what I was trying to figure out. So I was talking to my dad, if he remembered like what they came out of. And what he remembered, because this was first built 20 years ago,
Yeah,
I think.
That's crazy.
He thought it came out of the Fox body that was the donor car originally. And so I'm looking up like,
There were
okay,
buckets out of a Fox body Mustang?
that's what he thought. And then so I started looking up like Fox body seats and like just to see if they were correct. And none of them, they were like close, but none of them really did. Like the stitching was a lot different and even some of the shape. So I figured, okay, it wasn't out of Fox body. I know it was out of something 80s. So I'm just like searching around like every manufacturer, like American make model, original seats. And I think I identified them, pretty certain that it is Chrysler LeBaron.
Oh, interesting.
Seats.
I gotta look that up. I remember those cars. Were those the ones that you could get with like wood grain on the side?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I think I'm actually gonna keep them.
If they're cool, I mean,
Yeah, and honestly, they're super comfortable.
are they like God, what were all the seats in the 80s like? Velvet or whatever, you know what I'm talking about? That's not
Yeah,
that
I mean it is
I can't think of
that
it.
like synthetic like velvet like fabric.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
It's
no,
so ugly.
100%. They're like that 80s, early 90s blue like color
Yeah.
that's been like
Yeah.
faded. So I think I'm gonna keep them. One, they're there. It's one thing I don't have to worry about.
Yeah. Just
at some
recover 'em or
point get them
something, yeah.
reupholstered. Yeah,
I did look into that though when I bought my Falcon, it had buckets out of a 90s Mercury Cougar, like late 90s, and they were so ugly and they were tall back buckets which looked ridiculous in that car.
Yeah,
and but at first I thought like, okay, if you get rid of the headrest and stuff, like they could work, I guess, with the height if I recovered them, because they had these stupid like 90s pink and turquoise squiggle lines, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They were like
Yes.
dark gray seats with the like,
yeah.
oh my god, it was so ugly. And that was in the 61 Falcon. It was hideous. So I'm like, oh my god, these have to go. But I've got this upholstery shop I've used a couple of times for seats, and I went over there and I was like, hey, what would you guys want to recover these like in some sort of black vinyl, like make it look somewhat right for this car? And it was, I forget what it was. They wanted, then they're fairly expensive, but they do good work, but they were, I don't remember, $700 or something. And I was just like, I bought brand new Pro Car classic low back buckets with brackets for less than that.
Oh
So
yeah, I looked into those also.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've got those in the car. I've had them in there for a year now. They're awesome. Those are the best. They're super comfortable. They look vintage for 60s stuff. I think those are the way to go.
It's funny. I actually was just thinking. So interior was never finished on this car.
What is it again? Remind me. I gotta look at the picture of the car.
It's a '58 Triumph TR10 estate wagon. Yeah, and the first, like on the image search, the first one they'll show up is the car.
That's your actual car, the red one?
Yeah, that's it. So this, when it was first built, it was built to like, okay, let's get on the road, enjoy it, and then interior we'll do later. And now I'm thinking like, okay, so it's been about 20 years since it was built. Never got around to doing the interior.
Oh shit! Is that Brady when you were like 8 years old?
Am I wearing that
Alien Workshop shirt?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like 13,
Dude,
I think.
awesome.
That was the day we picked it up.
Really? That's right.
Yeah.
Your dad's like, where? That's awesome. This is like the most 90s. What is this? 1990 or something? This
picture late 90s, I think.
Is insane because your dad's wearing the most dad's like outfit I've ever seen. He's got like New Balances on, like.
Awesome. Well, that's my literal.
He's got
future.
Glasses on a cord hanging around his neck.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't believe I forgot that.
Oh my god, it's like the most dad I've ever seen. And then you are like perfect 90s like skateboard asshole with an Alien Workshop shirt, long
the
hair.
mid part.
Awesome. That's a good picture.
Yeah, you made it. That photo was maybe caught in between days on my baggy like cargo pants.
Oh, dude, awesome picture.
So yeah, so it's 20 years, pretty for the most part of it on the road, and interior never got done.
Okay.
And then now another drivetrain swap is going in, and update before the interior is going to get done again.
What are these two motors in this? Like, there's one picture with the front end off, and there's what looks like a intake from a Ford 5.0 like EFI setup.
Oh, okay. So in the beginning, the 5.0 swap, we were going to keep the EFI.
Did you like get it? It came with that motor in it?
No. No, it came with some kind of 4-cylinder, like Triumph's like 4-cylinder. I think it was like called a wet seal motor or something like that, which don't really know what that means.
So you guys did this whole first swap.
Yeah, so it's on a custom frame.
Yeah, you can see that coilovers and independent.
Yeah, so 4-linked rear.
That like the whole thing's braced through the cab and everything. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so 5-liter V8 with a C4.
Okay.
I think it's C4. Yeah, C4 transmission into 8.8 rear end.
Wait, is this the original motor? There's one picture from the side a little bit. Is that the original? Looks like maybe a 4-cylinder. I just can't tell because it's like
no. That's the 5.0.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I see the intake on it. Does it have a supercharger or something? What's the whole thing on the top?
No, that's the intake, the EFI intake, and then later. There's just so much trouble with. I mean, this is also like EFI wasn't that easy to work with during this time. It was an mid 80s, late 80s motor.
Oh, that must just be the alternator from the angle I'm looking at it. It looks like it's this huge belt-driven thing. Okay.
Exactly. So we ended up just converting it to carburetor.
Yeah, that was probably not as easy of a swap as it is now, huh? Trying to dump not
80s
at
all.
Fuel injection 5.0 into stuff and keep all of that computer and everything.
Mm-hmm. It just kind of looked a little bit more hot rod too, with the more traditional kind of top carb and hat on it.
Can I make one comment?
No,
I have to.
Yeah.
I hate to. I assume I'm questioning your dad's wheel choices, but. I don't like the wheels.
Yeah, so that was so those are the rally wheels.
Those were probably hot wheels
rims.
though for the 90s, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is in like early 2000s, I think, is when it was completed on the road.
Yeah.
This was like the start of pro touring.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was hot shit for the time, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Okay. I'm not judging then. I'm just saying I don't like wheels in general,
But yeah, I will be doing a wheel and tire package on
nice.
it. We talked a little bit about that.
Dude, I'm excited. This it's already cool the way it is now, but I think you're going to come up with something pretty badass for this.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be really cool. I literally like every morning I wake up and just thinking about like and getting more pumped, like, okay, like it's happening. So
that's awesome.
It's going to be a slow, long process, but so be it.
Yeah, whatever.
It's going to take as long as it needs to take. I'm on no time crunch except my own.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a cool car.
And it's no one even knows about these things. Even Triumph guys don't even know about them. So
I've never heard of it. I've never even seen one of these before.
Yeah, they're just super rare, and not that really means anything, but it definitely, I don't know. It's cool. It's a cool conversation, especially like kind of piece.
A decent sized motor in it. That thing's gonna be a lot of fun. And it looks like the whole chassis and suspension was done pretty well. That looks like a nice setup.
Custom frame, 4-link rear, and Mustang 2.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what it looks like. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the drive shaft is 23 inches long, I think.
The car's really short. For a 4-door wagon, it's like tiny.
Yeah. So the firewall had to be pushed back so far that to fit the V8.
Right.
That when you're in the driver's seat, you're looking out past the B pillar.
That's crazy.
So you're looking out the middle like window.
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's been on my shop in my mind.
That's cool. I'm about to put in, I had to pull I pulled the steering box out of the Falcon because it was just toasty. I think we might have talked about that, but I finally got it back from the shop. They finally rebuilt it. It took forever. So anyways, now I got to get that put
Is it pretty tight?
Yeah, seems perfect, but I haven't put it back in yet. I mean, nice. I checked it like with when I picked it up. The only thing I think of to do, I just put some vice grips on the output shaft, and then just checked the play in it, and it's like instant now. And before it wasn't, when I dropped it off, like it had, at the wheel, it was like 8 inches of slop before it would engage. At the shaft, it's harder to tell, but it was still pretty, you could see it. You'd spin it a bunch and nothing would happen at the output. So yeah, so they fixed it up. I think it'll be fine.
Nice.
Well, let's talk about our topic. So we're going to talk a little bit about EFI versus carbs because we both played with both of those, and then see what our thoughts are. So
yeah, I would say not necessarily the like technical part of how they're different, more so just the world that they live in as far as like our thoughts on when it would be a good choice, say, to convert to EFI or to use EFI and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have tons of experience. Most of my EFI experience is in swapping the sniper system into the Falcon because I got sick of trying to get the carb tuned correctly. And that car never had the correct carburetor, I think, for the way the motor was set up anyways. I forget what it was. It was a Holly, I think, but I don't recall what size or whatever. But it was never set up right, which was the whole story of that motor when I bought it. I mean, that nothing was set up right. The guy just dropped a bunch of parts in it and, threw a big cam in it, but never had the head set up correctly and, the wrong valve springs and all sorts of stuff. So I'm not surprised. And that's why I'm no carburetor expert, but I don't think it was either not really the right size for the way the motor was set up or it was also not tuned correctly. And I'm okay, but I'm no expert trying to do that. So I got really sick of messing with it. So that's why I went EFI, because it's a pretty easy, bolt on for that motor setup. And then, but with bikes, I've never converted a bike to EFI. I guess that's way less common.
Yeah, I think it's definitely out there. And even before before we started recording, I did a little bit of research to see. I mean, I assumed and knew like there was such things as people doing EFI conversions on motorcycles.
It exists, it's just not common. There's no good kits.
There's not that
anything.
Much benefit, I would say, either.
No, not the way there is on cars, I don't think. I looked into it a lot, really just because I thought it'd be a fun project. The last time I almost a couple of times now I've almost done it, because you can get fairly cheap, like Chinese made EFI kits that are generally sized for a motor, size. Yeah. And then if you want to do the work to adapt it, you can reasonably put a throttle body on most engines, but there's no support in tuning is the thing. So you're going to get like,
yeah, exactly.
Most of these will run off of just about any sort of like crank and cam signal, sensor. Like they're pretty generic. So you can get them to trigger and run on stuff with a base map, but like, that's it. It just might run. Yeah. And it might not take any throttle. It might not be drivable. And then you open the whole door into fuel tuning and man, that's a lot.
And timing too.
Yeah. So
and not only like injector timing and also like ignition.
The ignition timing part on bikes never scares me, because I've got the equipment to pull a timing map from a stock box, so I can get a really good idea of how a stock ignition system on any sort of not everything, but most motorcycles or ATVs or whatever. I either already have the info since we build CDI boxes for a lot of stuff, or I can pull a fairly accurate timing map and at least figure out, where advance starts and where max advance is. Enough data points I can assume, make some safe assumptions. So the timing thing doesn't scare me, but then yeah, then when you add the fuel tuning on top of it, it's like, okay, you got to get fuel at the right time, and then enough fuel, and then it totally matters as the timing changes how you increase that. And it's like, and there's a lot of info out there, but there's also a ton of info that's like, man, people don't, I'm no expert, but some of it you read and it's just like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about like at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a little intimidating, but I almost did this on I had this ATV a couple years ago, a 2001 Polaris Sportsman 500 that I bought like original owners, like new. It was it was an old one, but it was like really nice shape, and the carburetor was fine. But I always thought like, okay, this would be a good motor to try a fuel injection swap on, because it's got the right sensors for input to it. It's got really like ton of room to work on it. Very simple. It's a Fuji industrial motor that they put in these things, this big single cylinder, unkillable motor. So I always thought like, okay, like if I'm ever going to do it, of course I ended up selling it, but so someday I'm going to do it just to learn, because I think it'd be a fun project, but so far, no.
Kind of what my thoughts are is about like, say taking older carbureted motorcycle and converting to EFI is more so not necessarily for the benefits of it, more so you can just say that you did it.
Yeah. That's the,
because I don't see a whole lot of reason to that would be actually worth the trouble and expense.
It's not. Well, fuel pump, and you have to deal. There's a lot more stuff to deal with on a motorcycle. And then typically, unless you're really riding a motorcycle, either mega long distances or like really changing conditions with temperature and altitude, like elevation, and stuff. I don't see what the benefit is. Like carburetors work in that situation. And the main thing I always see is like, with cars, it's one thing. Like you can bolt on a throttle body to anything with a carburetor intake manifold because it's all pretty standardized, right? So you can buy a kit that is fairly generic, and because carburetors were fairly generic and mounting style and stuff. I know there's all, lots of variations, but like realistically, you can buy something that has the right bolt pattern and it'll drop in. Bikes are not the same way, right? There's a million different air intake routing options and sizes for the throat to fit the intake. And like there's so many things that it's like trying to make something super generic for motorcycles.
Well, and also orientation.
Yeah.
So, like side mount, top mount, angled.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with EFI, that won't necessarily matter because there's no float pole.
No, but there's no great way to do something really generic. So I feel like if you're going to do it on a motorcycle, you're not going to get a bolt-on kit. So that eliminates a ton of people, right? Who can't fabricate anything, including me. Like I'm not going to fabricate an intake manifold. It wouldn't work. And if it did, it'd look like shit. So like I'm out.
I've seen some really bad ones,
but I feel like you just lose a ton of people with that, right? It's just not the way it is on a car.
And the consumer market's not there because the desire or need for it, or want, I should say, isn't there either. So
no, maybe it will be someday, but we'll see. I suspect
I don't see it.
Well, think like where I see it happening is like maybe on older Harleys or something, because you have huge generation of bikes that are all very much the same. So you very easily could standardize a kit that would fit a massive range of that vehicle. So I could see that coming about in the next few years. But where I don't see it happening is for stuff like, nobody's going to spend the time to do this for like a 4-cylinder carb motor, right? On a motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be insane. So
although I did do some looking up just to see what other people have done just for this episode, just to kind of out of curiosity. Yeah. And so I was thinking, okay, what's the most popular vintage motorcycle? CB 750 is one of those.
Oh, did you see?
So it's actually I saw quite a few, a handful, I'd say.
I never even thought to look at that.
Apparently, I don't know if it's just one generation of Gixxer 600 throttle bodies, but they like nearly just bolt right on. The Carb bodies the throttle bodies must be like the same size.
But they were the right spacing and everything to mount the whole
Yeah,
block.
so it was like nearly just bolts right on as far as into those rubber
Interesting.
intake boots.
But nobody wants to sell this. I mean, it all sounds like a great idea until you sell it and then think about tech support or like trying to support it as a product. Man.
Oh
holy
no.
shit.
Yeah, it's it remains, I would say, strictly in the I don't know, home build territory. But yeah, you found something that bolts on, but that's like really the smallest problem when converting to EFI.
Yeah.
You have the management, you have adding the crank sensors, like all the things that EFI needs to actually operate and control.
How do you retrofit that onto an old bike like a CB that had no sort of electrical ignition pickup? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be interesting. You got to get creative there to get some sort of usable signal.
I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult.
It's all totally doable if you have the skills. It's just most people, the average guy, even if he's interested, probably doesn't have the skills to do that.
No, definitely. That's why it's like, it's kind of like the people who would be doing this is one for the challenge and curiosity, and also like it's going to have to take that person.
I just always wonder, you do all that work on a CB 750, right? On a 70 something CB 750. Cool. Yeah. Super cool. But were you riding that bike in such a way that you're going to get any of actual benefit out of it? Most people know.
I don't think so.
But don't get me wrong. I'm all for doing something like that just because it's cool. That's a good enough reason. I'm not saying it's not. it's just a lot of work.
I mean, this is me, of course, but in my opinion, I don't even think it's that cool.
Yeah, I think it's always cool to do
it's just
because you can.
Yeah, but part of the reasons why I love older motorcycles is because of the simplicity of them.
Yeah.
And adding such complication with honestly like no guarantee at all that it's even going to work or function. The risk of like blowing up the motor, I don't think is very high.
No. I agree. I wouldn't do it on an old motorcycle. There's no value to me there. But that's why, like I said, the ATV thing, I would do it there because, and the reason it occurred to me is because that thing is a pain in the ass. We live like right at 5,000 feet. So you already have to lean stuff out crazy to run well here, that carbureted stuff to run fine here, just at our city level. Right. And then with the ATV, I took it out a lot up in the mountains and the snow and stuff. And it was a blast. But like the second you go up, typically we'd take it up like where we go rise probably 9,000 feet, somewhere around there, 8,500. But just that change of adding, another 3,000 feet, it would run even worse. So it was very hard to jet stuff correctly at home and think you sorted it out, and then find out after driving an hour and getting up in the mountains, and then you find out that it's still not right. So that was originally why I was like, oh dude, this would be where a useful EFI swap would come in, because it should be able to compensate for all that. So that was my thought. But
if I were to want to EFI swap an older motorcycle, the battle I would fight is, okay, so we're about the same kind of complication, maybe one's a little bit less, in price. I could do EFI swap or build a turbo kit for an old motorcycle. I would choose the turbocharging every single time. Yeah.
No, I agree.
And just have it either like blow through a carburetor.
Right. Yeah, I agree. On a motorcycle, I probably will do it someday just as a project, because I think it'd be fun. And I do want to learn fuel tuning and stuff more. I know the basics from my Holly Sniper setup, but that's very much starting with a running base map and then playing with it to make it better. And that's very different than starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what I do actually know something about, and that's the Holly Sniper system specifically. And it did piss me off that thing. So I put it on the car because I drive it in the winter and summer. And that thing was just, I could never get it to warm up and run well. It did run well eventually, but like, especially warm ups just sucked in the winter with that carburetor. They really did. Yeah. So that was my initial thought was, hey, like I got a Holly Sniper system on Black Friday. It was fairly cheap. It was like 40% off or something. It was pretty reasonable.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was cheap. And they were blowing out at their Thanksgiving sale or whatever. This was over a year, not this last Thanksgiving, the year before is when they did it. And they were selling whatever was their least popular version. Like I forget, it was the chrome plated or maybe the bare aluminum. I forget which one I have, but it was whatever the one that nobody wants. And I didn't care. It was going under an air cleaner. So I bought it because they were blowing it out like super cheap. And thought like, okay, like might as well. I want to learn this. This would be fun. The car's got a good motor in it. So, this will be fairly easy to get running and then I can play around with it. So I put it on and I read all this stuff like, oh, well, Holly Sniper's rad. It's self-tuning. It's just like bolt it on and go and like super easy. So I'm like, okay, installing the throttle body is like installing a carburetor, nothing there. Same type of throttle linkage and all, no big deal with any of that stuff. Plug it all in. Then you have to add a fuel pump, right? Because like this car had a mechanical fuel pump for the carb. So I ended up getting a drop-in Mustang and Falcon, supposedly an in-tank EFI fuel pump from Holly.
Yeah,
that does not require a return line. So for most of these, you have to run a fuel return, right?
Yeah.
For all the excess fuel that it's pumping. And the car, I didn't really want to run a whole nother line back to it. So their new pumps are returnless because they're internally regulated. So I bought this and it's like, okay, fits the Mustang and Falcon. Great. Get there, pull the tank, doesn't fit. Try everything, doesn't fit. Then I finally find out, oh yeah, this is always the problem with Falcons. The early Falcons, everybody says, oh yeah, fits a Falcon. Well, nothing fits a 60 to 62 or whatever the very early Falcon was.
Exactly.
Everything that used Mustang parts pretty much.
63.
Yeah, it was so, I found that out. Mine had an 11-gallon tank that was slightly different. So I had to get a Mustang 14-gallon tank, which bolts in, super easy swap. And then the fuel pump
that's good.
fits. So it's no big deal. It's just nobody tells you any of this when you start messing with it. So I put that in, get it running. Then of course, nobody tells you any of this is Holly should, but doesn't say anything about the fact that their system is just about incompatible with Ford small blocks because you have a distributor generating all sorts of crazy, EFI, EMI, like interference and stuff.
Yeah.
Right in front of their EFI computer that is mounted in the front of the throttle body. So it sits 2 inches away from the distributor and you'd get computer resets like every 30 seconds. The car would start and run, but it would just crash all the time.
Yeah.
So then you go down this road of, I finally have a great solution, but it took a lot of work. To sort that out. I have shielding and extra grounding and all sorts of crazy shit. So get it running, figure all that out. Runs well. You input all your parameters and stuff and it builds a base map for you based on what you tell it. Like, okay, fine. Does it run out of the box? Sure. Is it drivable? Sure. Is it good? No. It's horrible.
Generally out of the box before and even after, what I've noticed is they still run on the safer side, but rich. What I've found at least.
You have to compensate quite a bit. There was it's been a learning curve. And then I found it matters where you mount the O2 sensor. So like the first way I did it, I mounted it by their instructions, but they wanted you to mount it at a 45-degree angle to make sure moisture never collects on the tip of it. The way the pipes were routed under the car, I was able to mount it like I didn't weld it in. I used their clamp-on mounting thing, which seemed okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but I mounted it just slight angle, which was within their reasonable range. But I killed an O2 sensor in 300 miles. And then I had it cut out in my buddy's shop, like weld in a new bung that was actually at 45 degrees, like deeper in the exhaust, and put it in a new O2 sensor. And they warrantied it. Like they were great about it. But so it was easy replacement. But ever since I did that, I never had another problem. So there's, stuff like that. Then I went and added their timing control after I had built a good map and it was very drivable. Using my old Duraspark ignition on it. So then I swapped to their whole timing control system with their distributor, their CD ignition box, their high power coil. And then I'm right back where I started with even worse interference, and all of my original stuff to fix it doesn't work anymore because now it's extreme interference from the bumping up the ignition so much more. So then back to the drawing board and another like 2 weeks of trial and error doing all this crazy stuff until I finally found the right way to route the wires. Like all the signal wires have to be routed away from any of the high power stuff, and you have to shield it. Everything has to be grounded like crazy. So all my shielding on the computer had to have separate grounds, and I had to ground to the block, to the chassis, to the battery. Like it was a lot. And there's no one size fits all. It's just like, dude, if you want to make it work, be ready to strap in and try all sorts of shit as long as it takes. Once you sort it out, awesome. But certainly not pull out of the box, plug it in and go. I mean, we're talking like overall months of work to get a very, in the end, awesome system, but certainly not just, pull it out and dump it on like a carburetor.
Yeah. So kind of my feelings with EFI conversions, and this is specifically to say the self-tuner ECUs. Yeah. I feel, and I think yours might be a little isolated with that motor, because I think the best option for, say, the self-tuners would be on the like drop-in, like carb replacement throttle bodies, but not so much on the direct port fuel injection.
Oh yeah, I've never tried
setup.
That. I have no clue.
So that's my experience with the self-tuner ECUs. With that, I would stay away from them.
Oh wait, so you're using it on an OEM port injection system, but you're changing the controller out.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, I have no experience
to a standalone.
So then you have way more tunability and stuff, right? But supposedly,
well, you can, yeah, I guess so. And it's what works with that system, or the stock ECU wouldn't have.
Okay.
That with direct port, there's not enough options that you can actually adjust the self tuners. At least the one that I installed, which I fucking hate. I almost don't even want to name it, but there's only like 3 self-tuning EFI systems really out in the market,
right?
And one of them, it's not easy, I should say, is a hint. I would never use again. But with, say, direct port, I would use the standalone ECU that you actually have to go dyno to and actually go through the map, because you just have so much more control and bits of data you can actually adjust. But for like a carb swap conversion, I would say self-tuning is a pretty easy setup. There are some things you have to adjust and change, and you're going to, of course, run into some hiccups. But the benefit of that also, I think, outweighs a lot of some of the potential headache you can get. And if anything, just for more confidence every time you turn that key to start it, that's the part
I like on a daily driver. You don't pump the gas. You don't have to worry about it starting. You turn the key on, let the pump prime, and hit it, and it starts an idle. I've done it in 20 degrees outside, and that car starts easily and warms up, and it runs its enrichment loop, and you just let it sit there and warm up. It does everything on its own. It's really that part's nice. Yeah, like for a driver, which the Falcon is absolutely just a driver, and it was totally worth it in the end.
Yeah,
and it was fun, but it's not a car I needed to drive every day anyway, so it's a good project anyways to learn.
Yeah, and I'd say like application wise, for me, it would be like, say, to replace the carburetor. It would, like, application wise, it would be something like, okay, you know what, I want to get my feet wet with EFI or daily driver scenario. Otherwise, like if it's something you don't drive very often, or something you don't want to put a lot of money into, because you're at the end of the day, you're probably on an EFI conversion, probably spending, I'd say, at least $2,000.
Yeah, when it's all said and done. I mean, I did it much cheaper. Well, no, with ignition and stuff. No, when it's all said and done, I spent $1,500. I bet. I mean, I did it over 6 months, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say like $2,000.
That's probably average. Yeah, you're right.
Is probably, I'd say, on the fair side.
Yeah, easily.
with carbureted, I mean, you can buy a brand new carburetor 4-barrel
Right.
for what, $450,
Yeah, if that.
$400, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'll have to do some out of the box tuning, but minimal, really, if you're not too concerned about like optimizing. But and at that point, you're gonna want to go dyno tune it anyways.
Yeah.
But for like a standard just cruiser driver, whatever it may be,
Right.
just messing with the air fuel adjustment on the bottom,
Yeah.
out of the box, you're
it'll be
pretty much ready to
driving,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's right. It's not yeah, I mean it's cool. It has its place. I think of it more as it's not a gimmick. It's just if you want to learn and play around with it and stuff, then absolutely it's worthwhile. If you got the time and the cash to spend on it, like, yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's great. But it's not a quick solution for a lot of people. Well, the main thing that annoys me though is that it is these EFI swaps, like the Holly one specifically. But the same thing. I've talked to lots of people at car meets and stuff because they see the sniper stuff. I mean, because I didn't really try to hide it. This car I didn't care about. So you don't tell from looking at the engine with an air cleaner on it. You don't notice that it's EFI, but I've got the ignition box mounted on the firewall and stuff. Like it's all pretty obvious if you look around, right? I didn't try and make it look like it wasn't an EFI setup. And so people see it all the time. And then we talk about it. And I've talked to lots of people that went with the other, what's the other system called that's really common for a throttle body swap?
There's Phytech.
That's what I was thinking of. And I looked at that too. I like the Holly one better, but I've talked to lots of people and you hear the same thing over and over again. It's just like, oh yeah, well, I bought it because it's advertised as, bolt-on fuel injection basically. And then most people don't I've talked to so many people about that and a lot of guys didn't do the work themselves and they are into shops for thousands of dollars in labor trying to get the cars running right with these systems. And they're like, who did you have do it? I'm like, no, I did it in my garage. And they're like, well, oh, you didn't have to spend all this money. I'm like, no, but I spent a ton of my own time doing it.
Yeah,
I understand why the shops are charging this because they are not just drop in and go. Like it annoys me they advertise it that way. Is it very good? Yes, but they should be advertising it as what it is, not a like magic EFI swap. And that's they heavily imply it's just like, oh, bolt it on and connect a couple wires. And they always say like the Holly thing advertises it as like connect. What do they say? You technically need 6 wires to run or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's how they advertise it. Okay. But yes, is that true? Sure. You need power, fuel pump relay and a trigger wire, like from the distributor. Okay. Is that true? Yes. Is that realistic? No, because they don't tell you about the 8,000 hours of secretly routing wires where they don't get interference.
Yeah, exactly.
And people are like it's crazy because the car can run great with the hood open. And then the second you close the hood and you now give a new path for interference to bounce around, it'll die. People are like wrapping aluminum foil all over spark plug wires. And like, I mean, there's so many things people try and sort these out. And so I've had this conversation 10 million times and I always try and help. And I'm like, look, I've only done it on this one car, but in my experience, like it doesn't really matter what I tell you. I can give you some pretty good generic tips, but it's a lot of trial and error unless I don't know how else you do it. You just got to find the way it's going to run well on your car and your setup.
Yeah. And with mine, which is probably isolated as well, with the system that I did, they come with the harness.
Right.
And I was having so many issues with it, like weird issues. And I probably spent a week when I finally realized it's probably something in the wiring, investigating, trying to find it. And there were a couple connectors that were pinned wrong.
From the factory?
So from the factory.
No. I didn't have that, but that'd be horrible trying to track.
Yeah, and that's one reason why the system that I used is I will never.
What is it? What did you put on?
It's the it's for that LS motor.
Okay.
It's Fast Easy LS.
Fast Easy LS
system. Yeah, it's
I don't know anything about LS motors, so I never tried.
Yeah, it was just awful.
Huh.
Like absolutely terrible system, and I mean, it's running great now, but the amount of frustration that I had to troubleshoot that just is stuff like you shouldn't have to worry about on that system was just it was not warranted whatsoever. I don't know. I would definitely go, like I said before, on that setup. I would go with a ECU that you actually do have to go in and build the maps for. Yeah, because it's still, I know it's not squeezing out what that motor should be doing.
And that's annoying after the time and money too, you know.
Oh,
it still
my
doesn't
goodness.
do what
There's
you want.
so much money in that motor too. So the
That's
good thing
frustrating.
is they do have another ECU if we do go this route in the future that is pretty good, at least, that is direct just swap out ECU.
Yeah.
So same connectors, everything, and then you just take it on the dyno and put a map on it.
Well,
but
good luck.
That isn't really, it's not worth it, at least right now.
Yeah.
So
That sounds like a pain. Right on. Well,
we didn't really talk about carbureted. We talked about more just EFI conversions.
We can talk about that more another time, I think. But I mean, look, there's plenty of people who want to do that and don't have any experience with it. So just even talking about experience with EFI conversions is pretty useful info, I think. You know, because a lot of people don't get a straight answer. You call Holly, you're not going to hear any of that.
No, if you can get a hold of them too. I would say, like, as far as one place where I would definitely choose EFI over carbureted is on any kind of boosted scenario or like forced induction scenario.
The tunability,
well, not only that, but you have now abilities to put in safeguards that you would not be able to get with analog setup like a carburetor.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes a massive.
It's essentially protecting its insurance and protecting your investment, which is that drivetrain. So
yeah, it makes sense.
And honestly, like maybe even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have recommended that with a forced induction application. Just because the technology wasn't quite there.
It was not at the point where that would be easy to do. Now it's probably way easier than trying to dick with a carburetor forever to get it right.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know where you start.
Exactly.
Carbureting for like a turbo or something, man.
It's there, and it definitely is probably a lot simpler.
Well, what I think is so cool about the EFI system and the Holly one specifically is that look, I'm no expert fuel tuner. I don't have a dyno, right? So like, I just have to make real world adjustments to try and make things better that I don't like about the drivability, right? So what's really rad is I have a USB cable hooked up in the car that's under the dash. And so if there's something I don't like, and I've done this a bunch, I've got to the point now where there's not much I want to adjust anymore. But when I want to play with it, I plug it into my laptop, run the Holly software, it connects, shows the fuel map, and then live updates a little circle that floats around the fuel map. So I can see at any throttle position or driving situation or whatever, I can see exactly where it's at on the map. So if you replicate,
that's really cool.
I don't like this part. This is where this stumble is, but only under this condition. I can see if I can watch the laptop, I can see what's happening, or I can just run a data log, right? And their software is awesome, and their data logging is awesome. So you can very easily track it. Now, sometimes it's hard to remember, like you got to come, okay, where did that happen? Okay, I was like 30 seconds into the data log when I did that or whatever. So sometimes it's harder to find, but if you can watch it, or I've had a friend like sit in the car and watch the laptop so they can see like, okay, you were here in the map when that happened. And then you can see like, okay, I'm too lean there, you know, and then you can also, what's really cool is you can correlate it to the data log. So you can watch the map screen, play back the data log, find the point in the log that you didn't like, whatever was happening, and it'll be moving the cursor around as it plays it back. So it shows you like, okay, right there. So you don't even have to watch it. You can go back and see at that time, here's where it was in the map. And so those tools, it's like, holy shit, dude, that didn't exist 10 years ago. Like,
No,
that's insane
not at
that
all.
I'm some jerk off in my garage.
Exactly.
And I can go do that with a laptop and just play like EFI tuner guide. Like that's pretty cool.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. You can play engine management
Yeah.
God.
I don't always know exactly what I'm doing, but I can usually, I'm like, okay, if that's the spot where it happened and looks to me like it's probably a little lean there or whatever, and then you can play with all sorts of stuff. You can change the ramps for the, what do you call it, for the air, God, I always forget the air bleeder, the air idle control valve. So I'm thinking of. So you can tell that like how you want it to ramp up and down and stuff to like catch the idle. And my cart, and I still have never solved this, always has this weird problem that when the motor's cold, starts instantly, like first 5 minutes it's running. Summer, I don't notice it, but in the winter, first 5 minutes of running, I drive out of my neighborhood. It's like, I don't know, a quarter mile from my house to the exit of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I come up to the stop sign at the neighborhood to pull out on the main street, and I clutch in, like let the motor RPMs come back down, roll to a stop, and the motor stumbles and usually dies. Sometimes it catches and pulls itself back up. And I've tried everything I've read about, everything I could think of, tried to have the idle controller catch it earlier, like ramp up faster so it is providing more air at that time. I've tried all sorts of stuff, changed the fuel mixture. It doesn't matter, like anything. I've never solved that problem. Don't know why, but it's pretty minor thing. So as soon as the motor's warm, it never happens. So
yeah. I think the Holley unit is definitely superior to the fast unit that I used. The only reason I wanted to go with the Holley, but the induction system that we're using on that motor, it's recommended the fast unit. So I was thinking, okay, they must have like a preset in here or something. They've working with fast or whatever. But no, not the case at all.
They got paid $10,000 to just put it in there.
Exactly.
User manual.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, and my application too, with it being individual throttle bodies, it adds some complexity to the system too, because just tuning those in general, it felt kind of like a hybrid system, like say analog adjustments that work with electronic setup as well. So definitely added a lot of complications. Because I had to sync all of those 8 throttle bodies, and there's no idle air controller because you can't really. I mean, you could technically, because I could link the plenums together, but appearance wise, it would look like a total mess. Yeah, you just talking about the Holley unit, I definitely wish I would have gone that route.
Well, it's not. It has its own problems, but I think once you get it up and running, their way of tuning is pretty.
That's what the tuning capability. I think you have a little bit more.
And it's pretty intuitive too. That's what I was looking for. It's intuitive, and so even going into it, and they have a good manual that gives you really good overview. So it's like, hey, if you don't know shit, like read this. Here's a good overview of what you're doing and what you're adjusting. And then, it's like, okay, here's what you probably don't want to mess with. The rest of this, like you probably won't kill your motor, but and then it tells you kind of what to look for. And so I read all that and I was like, okay, I read enough stuff online. I'm like, okay, I could probably figure it out. So it's not bad. It's a good crash course in EFI tuning, but I'm certainly no tuner. Like I just know,
I would not call myself one either.
To try and improve it. I think about at the point where like without investing tons more time, which I don't want to do, I probably won't get it any better myself. And there's a lot of guys who do remote tuning for these. Yeah. And it's like $300 and you can pay a guy to, like remote login to your laptop and like you kind of tell them what you like and don't like and
have live feed.
Yeah. I'm probably going to do that at some point because I feel like I've maxed out what I can do without tons of time. So
that you're comfortable with at least.
Yeah. And I know it's already pretty good. So I'd be willing to spend $300 if somebody will walk in and help me like take it to the next level and make it really, really, really good.
Absolutely.
So we'll see how that goes. I was going to do it this summer. I still might, but I don't know. Steering first.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's wrap this up. I know you've got a busy afternoon and I'm right there with you.
Cool. That was some interesting discussion, I think, but yeah, thanks for checking this out. And we'll be back next week with Max again, I think. And back with another episode. So yeah, hopefully shoot us an email. Let us know what you want to hear. Contact at allwheelspodcast.com and hit us up on Instagram at allwheelspodcast. And hopefully we'll
Happy
hear from
4th of
you.
July.
Yeah, happy 4th of July. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.